Aujourd'hui, nous étudions 10 questions importantes en français. La première question, c'est quel jour sommes-nous? Quel jour sommes-nous? Donc la réponse, nous sommes, et puis quel jour? Vendredi. Quel jour sommes-nous? Nous sommes vendredi. Ou bien, on peut dire aussi, quel jour sommes-nous? C'est vendredi. C'est vendredi. Donc, quels sont les jours de la semaine? Donc, il y en a 7. Lundi, mardi, mercredi, jeudi, vendredi, samedi, dimanche. Have you noticed some differences between French and English days of the week? Hopefully you noticed that in French, the days of the week are not capitalized. Of course, unless they're the first word of a sentence. So your lundi, mardi, mercredi, jeudi, vendredi, samedi, dimanche are not capitalized. What else should we notice? We should notice that we start with lundi. Lundi, c'est quel jour? What day is that? Monday. So the French start their week on Monday. And then they'll group samedi and dimanche, c'est le weekend. They're grouping their weekend days together. Where here in the US, we start on dimanche, right? We think of Sunday and we go through Saturday. So you want to note that because that is important and it does make a difference. Donc, ça c'est la première question, c'est quel jour sommes-nous? Nous sommes vendredi. Nous sommes lundi. Nous sommes dimanche. C'est vendredi. C'est lundi. C'est dimanche. Voilà. La première question. La deuxième question importante, c'est quelle est la date aujourd'hui? Quelle est la date aujourd'hui? Donc, il faut savoir les mois de l'année. Les mois de l'année. Donc, quelle est la date aujourd'hui? La réponse, on peut dire encore, nous sommes. Donc, quelle est la date aujourd'hui? Nous sommes le 12 septembre. Nous sommes le 12 septembre. Ou bien, on peut dire, c'est le 12 septembre. C'est le 12 septembre. Donc, la question, quelle est la date aujourd'hui? Nous sommes le 12 septembre ou bien c'est le 12 septembre. Les deux sont possibles. So, we're talking about dates in French, right? What is the date today? We can use that same response, like I mentioned, nous sommes, and we can use c'est. But one thing that's important when we're talking about the date, you should hear this little word, le, in front of it. Okay? C'est le 12 septembre. Right? I'm saying c'est le 12 septembre. Okay? Le 12 septembre. Remarque encore. Right? The letter is lowercase. Right? So we're going to say it's the 12th. In English we'd say the 12th of September. Right? C'est le 12 septembre. So it's important to notice that just like the days of the week, the months of the year are not capitalized. Mais attention, il faut faire attention parce qu'il y a 3 mois où il y a des accents. Donc on a janvier et puis on a février. F-E, accent aigu. Voilà, accent avec février. Mars, avril, mai, juin, juillet, août. Ah voilà, un autre accent. A, O, U. Accent circonflexe, T. Donc août. Puis septembre, octobre, novembre, décembre. Un autre accent. D, E, accent aigu. Right? So you see the 3 months. There are 3 months that have accent marks. And those are important. They're considered spelling in French. So you don't want to forget the accent marks. especially on those E's, because that changes the pronunciation of your word when you don't have some of those accent marks. So, it's important when we're responding, like I said, we have this little le in front of it. Nous sommes le 12 septembre. C'est le 12 septembre. Okay? It is the 12th of September. And the day is coming before the month. And that's important because even when I'm going to write that out, right? If I'm going to say, if someone says, quelle est la date? Quelle est la date aujourd'hui? And I say, c'est le 21 mars. C'est le 21 mars. Then if I'm going to write it, notice how I write it. C'est le 21 mars. I write it exactly how I say it. The day and then the month. That's important, right? Because obviously you could figure it out here. We don't have 21 months in a year, right? We only have 3 would be the acceptable. So I'd say, oh yes, it's March 21st. But it gets a little more complicated than if you would say something like, quelle est la date aujourd'hui? C'est le 11 mars. Okay? When I hear that, I can hear mars. I know it's March, le 11 mars. But if I just see this written out, right, as an English speaker, we think, oh, it's November 3rd, right? No, in French, okay, we're going to have it the opposite way, right? So it is the 11th of March. So you want to be careful and pay attention to dates, especially when they're written. Now, orally, you should be able to hear, right? You hear mars, so you know obviously that it's March and it's the 3rd month of the year, and you're not going to get confused and think that it's Novembre if they're saying mars. One other note with les mois de l'année, right? Most of the time, as long as we know the numbers, we can get the days, right? C'est le 10 mars, c'est le 11 mars, c'est le 21 mars, c'est le 30 mars, right? We're using our numbers. But there is an exception, one time when we're not just going to use our number. We're going to say, c'est le 1er mars. It's the 1st of March, right? So they're going to use le premier. So when I say quelle est la date aujourd'hui, I can say c'est le 1er janvier, c'est le 1er février, c'est le 1er mars, c'est le 1er avril, c'est le 1er mai, c'est le 1er décembre. It doesn't matter what month it is, the first day is always going to be premier, le premier, the first. And then after that, we will go back to the other numbers, right? So, c'est le 1er mars, right, the 1st of March, but the next day, we're going to say, c'est le 2 mars, right? C'est le 2 mars. It's the 2nd. So in English we say 2nd, but they're going to say c'est le 2 mars. So that's an important distinction to know so that you don't get confused on 1st and all the other days of the week. So I hope some of these hints helped you, or if you had any questions, that I answered some of them. If you have more questions, please don't hesitate to send me an email. Merci. Au revoir.